A sea of spot fires lights up the night sky in a field near Tehran. The apparent remnants of the Ukraine International Airlines flight that crashed shortly after takeoff from the Iranian capital. Iranian TV stations are the first to broadcast images of the accident, including this mobile phone video, which appears to show the plane going down. But it's daybreak that reveals the extent of the destruction. Plane debris smoulders, a jet engine lies abandoned, and the personal belongings of the victims lie scattered across the field where the plane went down. Eyewitnesses say they heard an explosion when it did.
It was about 6 o'clock when we heard an explosion. I was on the way to work, but returned and was here shortly after. When I arrived, the plane and passengers' bodies had been shattered into many pieces. The only thing that the pilot could do was steer the plane towards a soccer field and away from a residential area.
The plane carried more than 170 passengers and crew from a number of different countries. None of them survived. Iranian state television and the Ukrainian embassy in Iran both blamed mechanical issues for the crash, the latter adding that the incident was not caused by terrorism. The airline itself says it's still trying to determine the cause. As investigators search for answers, rescuers are handling the grim task of recovering the dead.
For more on the plane crash, I'm joined now by aviation expert Jeffrey Thomas. He joins us from Perth, Australia. Jeffrey, what more do we know about this crash?
Look, we now understand there was a significant engine failure. And it may have been an uncontained engine failure where the fan blades of the engine exit the engine itself and possibly puncture the fuselage. There was a large glow from this aircraft prior to impact on the ground, and the examination of the wreckage shows one engine remains pretty well intact, but the other engine shows significant destruction and exhibits telltale signs of a massive fire. We know that there's 176 people on board. In fact, some counts put that at 179. 147 of those were Iranian folks going to Kyiv. So at this stage, it appears to be a major mechanical problem, and that's been confirmed by the Iranian investigators on the ground. But why the pilots couldn't contain this fire, we don't know. There was no communication from the cockpit whatsoever after sign-off, no hint of any problems. All tracking devices ceased before at about 8,000 feet, and then the plane plummeted down to the ground.
What can you tell us, Jeffrey, about the safety record of the plane, of this particular model, this 737, and the airline that was operating it?
Yeah, this is the 737 next generation, or NG. This is the 800 model. There's three models. There's the 700, 800, and 900, varying in size. The 800 has an excellent safety record. There's over 7,000 of them flying around the world at the moment. They do about 4 or 5 flights a day. So it's a very significant contributor to the world's airline system, and a very reliable aircraft. The Ukrainian International Airlines was formed in 1992. It has 38 aircraft in its fleet. It flies to about 88 destinations, and this is its first fatality. So it ticks all the boxes, has done all the major safety audits. So it's a very good airline, highly respected. So this is really quite a strange and very tragic occurrence.
Now, this accident happened, Jeffrey, just as Iran was launching ballistic missiles against targets in neighboring Iraq. Could that have been a factor in this crash?
Look, I don't believe so. No evidence is to that to suggest that could be the case. It's very early days at this stage, but initial suggestions are no, it did not have any impact. This appears to be a technical problem, a technical failure, and this aeroplane was carrying mostly Iranian nationals, so I'm sure it was not a target. Either intentionally or unintentionally. It appears to be a mechanical issue.
Jeffrey, thank you very much for your insights. That was aviation expert Jeffrey Thomas there. Now, for reaction from Ukraine, I'm joined by Kyiv Post news editor Matthew Kupfer in Kyiv. Matt, a terrible accident there that Ukrainians are waking up to this morning. What's the reaction from Kyiv?
Just a terrible accident, but so far the response in Kyiv is fairly muted. What you should know here is that yesterday was Eastern Orthodox Christmas, which means people are today likely just returning to work from the holidays. It's been for the last almost 2 weeks, a number of holidays, people resting, and this is very early in the morning here, so the reactions are muted. There have been some expressions of condolences from a few embassies. I think there's been, we know there's been a statement from President Volodymyr Zelenskiy where he says that the Ukrainian embassy in Tehran is working to look into the crash and gain more information. He's returning to Kyiv urgently from Oman. But other than that, so far the reaction has been fairly muted because it's such an early morning event for Ukraine.
Do you have any information about who was on that tragic flight?
We don't know yet. I've seen no information about the passengers, the manifest of the flight. And, this appears to be a regular flight. It's not entirely clear who the main travelers are, but I would suggest it's likely a mixture of business and tourism travelers. But other than that, we know very little.
Matthew, thank you very much. That was journalist Matthew Kupfer there in Kyiv.